Hello, my name is Benjamin Verbicek, and I'm the lead pastor of Community Evangelical Free Church. I'm also the managing editor of gospel-centered Discipleship, and I'm coming at you with the 6th installment of the 2nd season of the Writers Coaching Corner. I've been away for a few months. Our church is planting another church, and we hired another pastor who will come help here among us in a few months. And I spent the spring coaching a track and field team that won the district championship, the conference championship. So you probably didn't hear about that, but it was a pretty big deal. So at least we felt that way. It was a lot of fun, even when it was a lot of work this spring. So what I want to say is, in the Writers Coaching Corner, I come at you every month, but I don't come every month. I skip a few here and there, but we're here now. And what we're going to do is talk about an aspect of writing that appeared on one of our articles last month, and what was going on so wonderfully and helpfully in that article, and how we can get some of that writerly goodness into our own prose. And so the principle we're talking about this month is that good writing avoids using bullet points. Good writing avoids using bullet points. Now, this, I think, will be my most controversial post, which probably doesn't say much, because many of these haven't been that controversial, nor do I think this one is that controversial either. However, I get articles a lot that don't do that, and I know why. If you go onto the popular websites out there, whatever they would be, many of them are going to have their articles full of bullet points, and it's my conviction that if you want to write words that are to be read and not skimmed, then you need to not write in bullet points, because bullet points aren't meant to be read. They're meant to be skimmed. Now, there's a purpose that can be helpful sometimes for bullet points. A writer might use them. A website might format an article that way for certain reasons. But if you want to be read, you need to avoid bullet points. So I want to give you a few examples of that. We're going to come over to this article here, 13 pieces of unconventional preaching advice. This is from an author named Tim Wilson. He's a British author and pastor, and I guess we'd say preacher in this case. He's talking about preaching, as that's part of what he does. And I will tell you, I'll just pop over to Twitter here real quick. This originally showed up as 28 pieces of unconventional preaching advice, and I actually reached out to him via Twitter message and just said, hey, would you write that into an article? I like what you're doing here. This could be helpful, and we pruned it down. He pruned it down, and out came this article. Now, the way it was published, there were very few bullet points. So I'm going to scroll down. Now this one, search your sermon for the word we and change it to you. Now, I just left that in bullets there. We need to do evangelism versus you need to do evangelism. I thought there was no better way to do that. I get what he's doing there. Number 7 here. Until you're good at preaching, preach 5 minutes shorter than the regular preacher at that church. I think that's super helpful advice. So we published the article, but you don't see very many bullet points in the article, particularly number 12 here. The exegetical sermon should be your bread and butter, but learn how to do topical and textual preaching. Now, there's no bullet points in this. Now, I'm going to show you another thing here in just a second, but I'll just say the article is already what we would call a list article or a listicle. It's a list of it's an article made up of a list. It's 13 things. So already the reader is inclined to skim, which makes them not so much a reader, but a skimmer. And so as I saw this, I thought, man, this is helpful. How do we reward a reader and not just a skimmer? And I think that was by formatting the article in such a way that it was meant to be read, not just skimmed. Rather than having, bullet points within bullet points, like Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. We needed to have substance between these points in the list article. So that's what I did. The original article was submitted to us this way, 13 pieces of unconventional advice. The original, for my own benefit here, it wasn't published that way. But if you scroll down to number 12, it originally looked like this. Same wording, essentially. Let me briefly define each one. So he's going to define exegetical, topical, and textual sermon. But then, so you've got a number 12, and then you've got 3 bullet points within it, and then 4 bullet points within that. And I just thought, Tim, you wrote something so good. I want people to read it. And maybe they would have anyway. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I just feel like bullet points incline readers to become skimmers, which means they're not reading it as seriously. And so let me go over to some of the resources. I want to grab one article from our website. This also appeared last month. It says, My Warfare Against Worry. I've brought up Tim Shorey before. He's struggling with stage 4 cancer, undergoing treatments for it. And so he's writing these reflections that we're calling Reflections from a Cancer Oven. And this is number 12. And this one's My Warfare Against Worry. And he's talking about Dear Journal, and he's writing, and he's describing his experience and trying to draw out a Godwardness and a gospel hope and amidst all that suffering. And he cataloged a number of the things that he's tempted to be worried about. And so he says in this one paragraph, for example, and then there's this large paragraph that originally was written as bullet points. I'm showing my editor hand here a little bit, but I put this into a paragraph because I was jealous for our readers who actually click the article. We don't have a huge audience, but those who click the article, I wanted them to actually read this. Why? Because I didn't want it to be skimmed quickly. I wanted the gravity of what he's actually saying to come through. So he says, I worry about bad blood work results, which is certain to happen one of these days unless God heals. Will it be today? He was waiting for, at the beginning of the article, you would have seen he's waiting for results. He says, I worry about long insomniatic nights alone with my thoughts and pains. Implied, I worry about increased fatigue and limitation. The pain I already have, the increased pain I don't yet have, depletion of daily energy by 4 p.m., some 6 hours short of bedtime, feeling too uncomfortable, weak, and tired to get much out of church. Then he writes, then there is the worry about feeling too uncomfortable, weak, and tired to even go to church. And he goes on, I won't read it all, but all of those were in bullet points originally, and I thought, I just want people to have to read them slowly, because if we make them read them slowly, readers read it slowly, I think they'll be rewarded. I want to go over here to Tim Challies' website. He's a blogger, super popular, and almost every day he's publishing a blog. Now he's writing something every day, publishing something every day. It's not always a blog post, but here's his homepage as it is today. This was the post he wrote, Holy Sexuality Project. Now this is Christopher Yuan, if I'm saying his name right. And you can see, just scrolling through, there's a post here. It's a review of sorts of his book, but also a celebration of the project that he's working on. Honestly, it intrigued me as a dad and thinking through what it's going to mean to talk to my own teenager. So I'm intrigued. But you'll just notice there's no bullet points here. Tim is writing articles when he writes them, which is almost every day, several times a week. And they're always in paragraphs, because I think he wants to write things that will be read. Now, if I go back to just the homepage here, and I scroll down what he calls his a la carte, now they're not physical bullet points, but they are a list. A title of something that's a hyperlink, and then you can click it and go through it. And this is presented to us as a list because I think he knows we're all going to skim it. And we're going to see a title that might look interesting to us. If the title looks interesting to us, we'll read the paragraph underneath. And if it looks interesting even still to us, then we'll click the link. Very generous of him to give away all these clicks. Speaking of generosity, I'll just show. He had a list of his 6 favorite books so far in the year, being offered at a 40% discount. You click on that, it takes you over to 10 of these. Number 5, Always Longing. It is a GCD book. How'd that happen? I don't fully know, but I'm thankful for it. Stephen Moorfield is a friend of mine, and he wrote a book called Always Longing about Heaven, and apparently Challies liked it, which I'm very thankful for. So there's a few examples of writers online who are using bullet points strategically. Here's a book called Smart Brevity, and it's it's celebrating brevity more than I would like it celebrated, to be honest. But it does make the strong case for when you might use bullet points. I've talked about this back in the February Writers Coaching Corner. Here's a book that isn't going to celebrate bullet points. It's called Style. This is from, I think, the 90s version. It's been updated several times. It's super expensive on Amazon, so when you find it, you need to find a used copy the way I did. It's been repackaged a few times. The Chicago Manual of Style produced this. It's called Style Towards Clarity and Grace. I'm going to read you nothing from it, but it is a much slower, more dense read than you might expect, than I might have expected, but really helpful if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of what makes writers write words that are actually going to be read. So that's a good book. For me, I know Russell Moore is controversial for a whole host of reasons. I do think he's a good writer, and this is one of my favorite books by him, The Storm-Tossed Family, How the Cross Reshapes the Home. And what you'll find in here is no bullet points. You won't even actually find what are called headings or heading twos, subheadings within chapters. He occasionally does the asterisks and breaks the text up that way, but even there, it's just giant walls of words. And if you're going to have giant walls of words, you better be good with those words. And I tend to think, for all the controversy about him, whatever you think about that, he is someone who is good with words. So, applications for you. I would just say if you're writing something and your default is to put it into bullet points, fine, bullet points. Maybe you're writing an outline, maybe it's bullet points, maybe it's an email, and that's the best way to convey information that you know you want to be skimmed. But then I would challenge you to ask the question, what do I really want my readers to do with this? Do I want them to skim, or do I want them to read? And if I want them to read, is there a way to write what I've already written into paragraphs in such a way that it will be clear and compelling and reward the person who actually gives you the time to click over to your website or the book or the newsletter or whatever it is you're writing? And so that's my very controversial, not so controversial hot take on bullet points. It's the video you didn't know you were asking for, but you received anyway. So anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next month with the next edition of the Writers Coaching Corner.